Hey, folks, welcome to another edition of the Church Doctrine here on it's on the YouTube channel, it's on the Crusade Radio Network, it's on the Substack, it's everywhere where yours truly is, and this is our long-form, freewheeling set of interviews. Thus far, we have interviewed Brother Andre Marie. We've interviewed Frank Wright, the great Substack blogger. We've interviewed Carrie Gress, the author. We have interviewed Michael Hitchborn, and all our titles have something with a movie twist in them. For example, Frank Wright's was The Right Stuff. So today is a very special treat because if you think the long form is cool and you start spacing out after 90 minutes going like, has he been talking for 90 minutes? You haven't heard or seen anything yet, because today's guest is the one and only George Webb. And I will be trying my best during the next 90 minutes to sneak a word in edgewise. Because once I unleash this titan of knowledge and information here, it's just trying to filter some of it down and go, okay, we're wandering off a bit here. George has been a interview guest here several times here on the Mike Church Show, and we got to know him during near the end of the Corona Doom, during the forced vaccine scandal, and that's when we first spoke. Today we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. We'll talk a little bit about New Orleans. We're going to talk about Laurel Canyon and a 15-part series on Substack. Now, if you're thinking like, well, Laurel Canyon, where's that at? Well, let's find out. So let me bring George Webb in here. And George and I were just talking before he came on. We were talking about NBA and basketball great Bill Walton. You said Bill had just died? I didn't know that.
Yeah, just yesterday, I think. And he used to record a show in Times Square when I lived in Times Square. And so he'd get out late and, I'd see him, I'm 6'8", so he's 7 foot. And so I'd say, hey, Bill, I remember you. And he'd go, you do not, you're too young. I said, no, I remember you throwing those passes to Bobby Gross. And I remember Lucas and all of them. And, oh, you do not? I said, yes, I do. So anyway, but that was Portland's dream year, 77 when they won it all. But like I said to you in the pre-thing, greatest probably collegiate player, winning all 3 championships, his 3 years of eligibility, because remember, freshmen couldn't play. And then, of course, a terrible pro because all the injuries, but, pretty darn good pro.
When you're running around at 7 feet tall, where this puts strain on your knees. And I told you my Bill Walton story. I met so many people in the elevator at Sirius XM. I met Buzz Aldrin in the elevator. I met Mickey Dolenz in the elevator. And I met Bill Walton. I'm standing next to this 7 foot tall giant, and he's got a tie-dye on. And I look and he's got all these rings on his finger, and I go like, that's Bill effing Walton. So I looked at him, I said, excuse me, sir, are you Bill Walton? And he went, yes, I am. And then he did the same thing to me. He goes, you don't remember me? I said, Mr. Walton, I said, I was a little cheerings. And I remember watching you play college basketball, and I remember you being on the U.S. Olympic team. And I was a big fan, and I asked him, I said, why are you here? And he goes, I do a radio show about the Grateful Dead. So who would have known that Bill Walton, the great basketball player, was a deadhead? So much so, George, that he kind of like traveled around with the band. He's one of those guys that follow the Grateful Dead around.
Yeah, and I think he was kind of a counterculture hero for a while. He had the microbus and everything, and that kind of is the period of time when he was at UCLA that I cover in this book, which is the Echoes of Laurel Canyon and the whole counterculture movement. And the basic theory of the book is the CIA injected LSD and meth to some degree into the anti-war program to make it something it wasn't, to make it hippies, to make it helter-skelter, to make it Manson, to make it dark, dirty, rather than, up until that point, the anti-war movement was give peace a chance, and we'd like to teach the world to sing with Coca-Cola, So after the CIA kind of injected LSD into the Summer of Love in 67 in Haight-Ashbury, and then 68, Summer of Chaos. So we're kind of reliving the summer chaos now. So there you go. So that's the basic theory of the book in it. But I lead up to it with the CIA in Hollywood, taking over Hollywood right after they're formed in 47. And that's why there's 15 episodes.
Okay, so it's I'm showing the audience right now Echoes of Laurel Canyon, CIA and Hollywood Part 1. From first days of CIA and HUAC, it was all about compromise and La La Land. There's something in your in the book or in the what I saw here on Substack that I think that you cover, but you might have covered it in another way. And I did a show about this, about him the other day, and that is Senator Joseph McCarthy, because, the McCarthy era comes around about this same time. And, I was telling the story that, I knew Stan Evans, M. Stanton Evans, one of the founders of Human Events. I say I knew him, I interviewed him twice. As a matter of fact, I got the interview because of Ann Coulter, because I was interviewing Ann at the time, and Ann liked me. And she says, Mike, you're one of the few people that will even interview Stan. You should interview Stan. And I said, yeah, okay. And she told me all about the book, and then I got a copy of it. And if you know anything about the real history of the McCarthyism trials, you know that McCarthy was the good guy. McCarthy is revealed as the good guy in the Venona papers, and that's what Stan Evans wrote the book about. So this is all happening kind of around the time Laurel Canyon's starting, right?
Yeah, it kind of leads. I mean, House Un-American activity started out being in World War II, as it always is. They always start these things for something else, and they repurpose them. It started out to try to ferret out Nazis in the defense industries. But then it got repurposed after World War II to go after communists, Alger Hiss. Nixon kind of made his splash. And then it's reused again and again in Hollywood, Reagan, and all the studio heads, Jack Warner, and all the studio heads to take over, kind of remind them, if you're not listening to us, you're going to get shut down like Bobby Kennedy's grandfather. Joseph Kennedy got his RKO studios taken away from him, given to Howard Hughes. So this is kind of how I lead in. And then it leads into the McCarthy area in the early 50s as well. They keep hammering that Russia, Russia, Russia. So Russia, Russia, Russia didn't start with Trump. It started with, House Un-American Activities Committee, right as soon as the CIA formed to take over Hollywood.
But the Russia, Russia at the time, we're talking Soviet Russia. We're talking pinko commies here.
Yeah, it was much more of a threat then. I mean, we were supposedly all aiming all these missiles, 30,000 missiles at each other. So it's much more serious than after the fall of the Soviet Union. So, and Sputnik, with a little satellite bleeping over our head, created a sound and a fear, in all of us. And then we started something called the Perona Program, which is, it's not good enough to just do U-2 spy planes. We have to throw satellites into space. And the Corona satellite was the size of a bus. So, and that launches another series of surveillance and potentially assassination programs in order to keep those secrets secret.
Whenever anyone says Sputnik, most people's mind probably goes to the thing that you just said. My mind goes to the great Tom Wolfe's book, The Right Stuff, in the movie, and Jeff Goldblum running down the hall, a young Jeff Goldblum, and throwing Truman's door open or Ike's door open, and goes, the Russians just put a bird in space. You remember that?
Sure, and that was actually LBJ, supposedly. If you remember, he was Senator LBJ then. He was ex-Navy. That's a part of my book. All the guys that were involved in getting the first swept wing fighter with the JFK assassination. That's all in this, all of New Orleans, all of Dallas. That's all part of this series. But yeah, you're right. That launches the space race and NASA and also DARPA, which we now know has a different kind of corona, right? So, and it's all, believe it or not, a part of the same program. So it's above top secret, literally, because it's above in the atmosphere, above the Kármán line, they call it. The Kármán line is the demarcation. And those programs are still above top secret, and only the Department of Energy and and people with nuclear Q clearances know about them.
So let's start at the beginning here. Why does this entity known as the CIA, why does it want to take over Hollywood, if you will? Is it because they see because Hollywood isn't what we think Hollywood is today. It wasn't that way. Then you got to remember, into World War II, and during World War II, and then in the aftermath, most Americans are getting their news and their entertainment from where? Radio. There are movies. Now, movies are king, but television has barely come along. So, and you might have a newsreel at the start of a film, right? But radio is king. But the CIA sees the visual medium, sees television and film as the way to get to the masses.
Absolutely. And that was the way during World War II. Most people got their news either through the radio, like you say, but the visual was when they went to the newsreels and saw, the world on the march, march the news. And that's where we learned to hate Nazis in the movie theater. That's where we learned to hate Japanese people in the movie theater, right? And then at the end of World War II, the problem they had was the Nazis were the ones that the CIA was bringing in as their scientists, and now they have to flip the script. And those are the good guys now. So all these bad guy movies now have to be flipped. And now the Russians, who are our allies, who we were cheering in the newsreels a week ago, are now the enemy. So they had to go to Hollywood to get to the world with this new message, because it was so important. The Cold War, the whole idea of a Cold War was completely new, and they had to sell that idea. And they did with a lot of movies like I Married a Communist and all these kind of crazy movies they did in Hollywood.
Mom, I married a communist. No, dear, you can't do that. Well, I did, and you're going to have to love her. You think we're making this up. You're not making this up, because in the subsequent chapters on the Substack, it's georgewebb.substack.com. In the subsequent chapters, you show all the movie posters. Because I'm looking at it going like, there's no way. How did I not know this? How did we not know this?
Well, it's subtle, but the color, Disney, they were big in the anti-war in World War II, and then there's a big unknown here is there's a huge studio underground in Laurel Canyon. It's just as big or bigger than all the major Hollywood studios, with the latest equipment in the side of a mountain in Laurel Canyon that the Air Force is using to normally as a lookout for the radar defense of LA in World War II, but then it cuts over into propaganda. And they're giving out money to the various studios to make these communist films. So you have all kinds of G-Man films that are made, and all kinds of nuclear espionage films that get made. And Hollywood turns on a dime. And if they don't, you remember the Hollywood 10, they came down and smacked the writers and directors and producers who didn't fall into line right away.
No, I don't remember the Hollywood 10. The only reason I know the Hollywood 10 is because Echoes of Laurel Canyon. So I was actually, I've been following along since episode 1 of the Echoes of Laurel Canyon on the Substack here. So I actually don't remember who were the Hollywood 10?
Yeah, Dalton Trumbo and, various directors who had written scripts that, kind of were, hey, we all should get together and build a dam together, for the neighborhood, or we should all, work together, build tanks together, or build cars together. Anything that had a kind of an undertone. Dimitri, I can't remember what first name, but there was like 10 different key. Ring Lardner was one of them. They were well-known writers who were blacklisted, who couldn't work in Hollywood. And there was a few people like Judy Garland and a few actors that stood up for him and said, hey, this is we fought for freedom, and now freedom of expression is being shut down. But then, Walt Disney testified at the House Un-American Activities, and so did Ronald Reagan, and so did the other studio heads, and said, we're falling in line. What do you want us to do? And that was the story. Hollywood was taken over in kind of a 2-week period during these House Un-American Activities Committee in 1948.
This is an incredible story here. You follow along on the Substack. Who did the artwork?
I did a lot of it. I did a lot of it with AI. Normally, you couldn't do I couldn't do this without AI because it's so much artwork involved. Commercial artist, and I could never have afforded it. But then I did screenshots of a lot of the movies and so forth. But every one of those, I couldn't have done this a year ago because the tools just didn't exist.
The eagle here. I'm going to show the audience the eagle flying with the movie camera on one kind of wrapped around him. The movie camera is in the talons, and then the pinko Russian, so the Soviet Union flag is kind of flying around his wings. That's a stunning graphic there. Is that AI?
Yeah, Chat GPT, and then they have an image generator, and now each image unfortunately takes about 50 different tries.
Oh, okay.
As you teach it what you want, because the first one you get is nothing like what you want in the end. So you have to kind of iteratively do it, but it's much cheaper than a graphic artist. And then you put the caption in that you want, and it's a way of telling stories, kind of storyboarding that wasn't available to authors before, and it is now. So hey, you got it.
You're putting artists out of work, though. There's a starving artist out there, literally, that George Webb is now starving.
Well, they're welcome to come in and illustrate it, and we'll split the money,
What if the artist came in and said, George, you said it took 50 tries. I can get it in 3.
Go live at it. The AI is getting better. It's not so where you have to train it so many times. It's getting better and better, and so I'm able to crank these out. A typical storyboard, for a movie might have several thousand pictures. The old Disney type thing, or the Alfred Hitchcock would do all the drawings. Literally, it cost millions and millions of dollars, and they would do this before they shoot because they wanted to have a real good idea of what was going to happen before they started rolling cameras out. Now you can do it kind of with never going to the camera. It gets pretty close to the idea, like you see with them flying the camera with the Soviet and versus the American flag, eagle. You can get pretty close to the concept you're trying to get to.
Okay, so now you say in the book, Universal Studios, MGM, that's Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, Warner Brothers, Paramount, and then Disney are these are the studios that are in the Lookout Mountain Air Force Base. Are they all using this underground studio?
Not so much. That's really done for things like photos of explosions, of atomic explosions. This is the same group that films the Bikini Atoll and the Eniwetok Atoll and the Trinity test out in the Nevada test site. The studios are still filming in their respective areas. Warner Brothers is up in wherever, Universal's up in Burbank, et cetera. So they're still filming at their locations, but they have this talent pool and these resources that they can access anytime and get top secret clearances as well. Marilyn Monroe, for one example, has a top secret clearance at Lookout Mountain Air Force Base. Why?
Why?
To make porn? I don't know what. I have no idea why. I still am trying to find out why she had a top secret clearance. I think it was to give her information to try and trap Bobby Kennedy and John F. Kennedy, the Trinity.
So she was an early Epstein.
Yeah, she was a lure. They were giving her information. They had her meet with the Hollywood 10 type people. Her doctor, her personal doctor, I can't remember, Greenson, I can't remember his name right now, but he had ties to this Hollywood 10 group. So did her physician. So by luring her to the Kennedys, they could do wiretapping. We're not trying to listen in on this. We're not trying to compromise the Kennedys on sex and embarrass them before the election. That's not what we're doing. We're afraid that she's going to give up some secrets, to the Russians. The Russians are going to get some secrets from a sexual lure. So that's really what why she was under surveillance. Her home and the places where she would meet Jack and Bobby Kennedy were under surveillance by the FBI and CIA.
Okay, so we end part one with kind of the revelation of what's called the Military Airlift Command, basically some sort of a branch of the United States Air Force. Is this this is the precursor to NASA?
Well, Military Airlift Command is out of Fort Scott. So let's say you were trying to militarily respond to coronavirus outbreak in Africa. You would litter the skies with F-130s. It's not F-130, C-130s, and they would fly, and hop to various refueling points along the way, and they would land with all the stuff that they want to land. And so one of the major commands of Military Airlift Command was these, the area out in Laurel Canyon. And what they mainly specialized in was filming and telling the story. Here we are in the Nevada test site. This is the 110th, underground test, or this is the 112th above ground test. There'll be a 25 kiloton going off today, and it should make a cloud a mile in the sky. I can't wait to see it. How about you? Kind of one of those newsreely kind of, sing-songy narrations. But that was their job at Laurel Canyon. But they took that top secret clearance and then decided to get into a whole bunch of other things. Hey, what if we were getting the secrets from the other parts of the Air Force and then doling them out to various Hollywood starlets and then trying to take down political figures? Go figure. Where is that in their charter? It isn't. But that did happen with Marilyn Monroe and many other stars in the Hollywood area.
So just for clarification, because I have heard this recently, I know someone that has actually said this and did a show about it on a YouTube channel. The claim now is that there never really were any large-scale nuclear weapons. That they faked them, they made the mushroom cloud true with a Moab, but it really wasn't the incendiary device that vaporizes humans. Now, there's a story told at Nagasaki and Hiroshima of shadow people that you can still go there today and see shadow people. Is this something that actually they were trying to make people believe that nuclear weapons were more dangerous than they actually were? I mean, there are nukes, aren't there?
Yeah, I believe there are, and I went to the Nevada test site. I've gone there many times. There's my Las Vegas shirt. I got the T-shirt, and I've talked to people who work there and have taken measurements. And there was like 100 underground, and there was like 100 above ground. Kennedy, of course, signed the atmospheric test ban treaty so that you could only do underground after that partial nuclear test ban treaty. But yes, there is. Now, I'm not saying that they didn't exaggerate it to build up the tension of the Cold War. They certainly exaggerated the number of missiles the Russians had. They exaggerated the Russians' capability to deliver the missiles, the et cetera. Most of the stuff that we gave the Russians, both the uranium bomb, which was the little boy, the one that hit Hiroshima, and then the Fat Man, which is the implosion device, the plutonium bomb made at Hanford, were both given to the Russians at the end of World War II. And they exploded a bomb 4 years later with our material and science in order to keep the Cold War going. This is a fundamental premise of my book, is that they didn't want everybody enjoying their newfound peace after World War II. No, we got to keep going. With the CIA, we got to keep going and keep fighting the war. Yeah, and so I don't think, but now, were some things exaggerated? Absolutely.
Well, that's what they do. Well, I mean, you see I think one of the more horrifying images, as if they're not all terrifying, one of the more horrifying images of the nuke or of a nuclear weapon are the aerial images taken supposedly immediately after the detonations in the Bikini Atoll. Because that mushroom cloud, because it's in water, there's nothing to stop it. There's no particulate hard matter like there is in the Vegas desert. So the water vaporizing makes a much more spectacular showing of what a nuclear bomb can do than than the fireball mushroom cloud you can see on land. Is that why they did that one in the Bikini Atoll?
Yeah, and that probably was processed. That film was processed at Laurel Canyon in the Hollywood Hills. And that was Operation Sandstorm and all those. And that was at the height of the Cold War when we were trying to convince each other that bigger is better. And then a little bit later, the Rand Corporation in Santa Monica starts with mutual assured destruction, which is, okay, we need to just make a lot of these, not just bigger and bigger. But so we've gone through several cycles of craziness, mutual craziness in this. But I'm sure that was part of the propaganda campaign against the Russians.
So when he is Senator Kennedy, then does he know about all this stuff that's going on with the CIA when he's Senator Jack Kennedy?
Yeah, he does. He's under surveillance with Marilyn Monroe in the early 50s. He becomes, I think, the first two till 52, he was just a congressman. But he knew Marilyn Monroe back then in 48 to 52. But then when he becomes Senator Kennedy and he gets on these important Senate committees like, the Armed Services Committee, and I don't know if he was on the Intelligence Committee or not. But yeah, now it starts getting real interesting. And then the Venona papers and the Angleton from the CIA counterintelligence ordering surveillance on Marilyn Monroe starts at about 55. That's when they really start working in, when she marries Arthur Miller, who's supposed to be a big communist pinko writer as well.
Right.
He wasn't in the communist Hollywood 10, but he was known as a communist, writer.
So now, ultimately, this all is going to, at some point in time, it's going to lead to New Orleans. Last year, when you were in New Orleans, schedules didn't work. I didn't get to meet up with you guys. Were you working on this book when you were in New Orleans?
I wasn't working on the LA part of it, but there's a lot of New Orleans in the early stages of this because NASA, of course, a big part of NASA and a big part of the story of the people who killed Kennedy are this General Dynamics group, this security group at General Dynamics, a guy named I.B. Hale and his sons Robert Hale and William Hale. And NASA, if you remember with Oswald, they have Michaud, which is not too far from you, to test the big Atlas Saturn V type rockets. There's a similar facility in Mississippi, Stennis.
Stennis, right.
There's a similar facility in Alabama, which is, up there in Huntsville. And then a similar facility in Florida.
That's the Marshall Space Flight Center, right?
Marshall Space Flight Center. And then that's where they test the big rocket firings, lightings, or whatever. And then they have, of course, Cape Canaveral. And this was all a part of the Southern strategy to move rockets like Chrysler was making the Redstone rocket. And they wanted to move the Atlas rocket to General Dynamics in Fort Worth. And, of course, you have to fire it somewhere close to the coast. You don't want to fire these ICBMs in Dallas. So they had to have New Orleans and they had to have Cape Canaveral and so forth. So it's a great story. It's New Orleans with all the intrigue with Oswald. Oswald went to school with the Hale boys. The Hale boys are snipers. They bring Oswald in as a sniper trainee. I.B. Hale gets Oswald his first job at the U-2 interpretation factory in Dallas, which is Jaeger's. It's interesting, Mike. If I left as a defector, right, from Russia, and I worked and helped shoot down the U-2 in Russia, mm-hmm. If I waltzed back in to the United States, do you think I would get a top secret job at a U-2 photo interpretation lab? Well, that's exactly what happened. And I.B. Hale, this is where I follow this I.B. Hale thread, in Saul Baines Hale. He gets him a job. Why? Because they want to convince Kennedy that the Russians have missiles set up in Cuba and you better not invade Cuba. Because they don't want the U.S. to invade Cuba. They want their private gringos, their Bay of Pigs guys to invade so they can privatize and bring back the casinos. So there's this battle going on of, hey, if we put in this Oswald guy that we knew from high school, Arlington High School, we put him back in there and he jimmies the photos a little bit, we'll present that to Kennedy. And Oswald comes back into the Yeager's photo interpretation lab in Dallas a week before the Cuban Missile Crisis. Interesting timing.
What? Now you bring up the photo processing lab. I didn't know about this one. I did know that, and this is why we do these kind of long-ranging church doctrine interviews, because I can go off script. I did know that a guy named Roscoe White got a gig working at a photo processing lab like 3 months before Kennedy was assassinated. Roscoe White was one of the Navy's top long-range sniper dudes. There are those that have made the claim, and Roscoe White's not around to tell us anymore because apparently he's dead. That Roscoe White was the guy, was the second gunman on the grassy knoll or whatever, but he was working at the photo processing lab, and this is how that was in Dallas. But he had no expertise whatsoever. He wasn't a photo processor. He was a Navy guy in the Department of Intelligence, the Navy Department of Intelligence. It's in the library. You can go to the Library of Congress and get it. There's paper from the Naval Intelligence Service saying your new assignment is at this photo processing. Why all this photo processing, George? What the hell's going on?
Well, that's how you get a top secret clearance. If you are processing photos from a satellite,
okay,
or from the U-2, those are both secret CIA programs, and you've got a top secret clearance. Now I can give you false identity. Now I can have you commit crimes. Now you can shoot somebody and not have any local law enforcement follow-up. They just flash the badge and say it's top secret national security. Don't ask any questions. So that's the story. With Oswald, that's a top secret clearance. And he could have then been a part of anything. Operation Mongoose, as you know, was an assassination program for Castro, but it got retooled potentially where they turned the guns back on Kennedy, the Operation Mongoose. And that was also down in Lake Pontchartrain out there for the Lacombe training base that they were training Contras, if you will, to go back into Cuba. And the FBI raided that in July 1963, and they didn't like that. If you're CIA, you didn't like that because it was wrecking their party. So there's a lot that you can do with, and this can be kept from the president by these top secret clearances are such that it's only need to know. So the president doesn't even know about it. The Joint Chiefs of Staff doesn't even know about it if it's an old enough program. If it started with the Eisenhower administration, there's no need for the people inside that program. The Perona Program is the one I call out in the book, but also Mongoose is a potential for abuse as well. But Perona could have been used again and again and again as a surveillance and assassination program. And the only president that would know about it is Eisenhower.
Did he?
He's the only, yeah, because he had to give the original green light. You have to give the original green light to the program. But then Eisenhower was kind of dead in a couple of years after he was out of office.
So when he gives his famous farewell address in 1960 and says, we have to be on guard and we must bring to an end this military-industrial complex, did he name it that, or did our guys at Laurel Canyon name it that?
I think he named it that, and he waited to the last minutes of his presidency, if you remember, because he was afraid they were going to censor him, cut the feed. He almost to the last minutes of his presidency did that. And I think that was something that he came up with because he was trying to say that this isn't just the military from your World War II days where we would throw a bid over the fence and then the great American manufacturers and Rosie the Riveter would go make that B-17 bomber. and you know what I mean? It wasn't that at all. It was one hand washing the other, the self-licking ice cream cone, if you will. Hey, we're in this one, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You come up with some kind of wacky Cuban Missile Crisis or Korea incursion or Gulf of Tonkin incident in Vietnam. we're going to have 20 years of profits, So I think that's where, and I think the Guatemala, where they overthrew the CIA, basically did the whole Guatemala overthrow with Allen Dulles and United Fruit, and Eisenhower didn't know until it was almost over, or maybe not even told until it was over. Patrice Lumumba was assassinated, if you remember, in Congo. They never bothered to tell Eisenhower. They told Kennedy about it when he had become president. So I think maybe Lumumba was the one that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Eisenhower. He said, "Hey man, I'm the president. You're not telling me any of this stuff." It's kind of like Trump when he said, "You're running a live exercise, Mike Pompeo, with coronavirus, and you didn't tell me. What's going on here?"
So there's a long history of this then. So is it fair to say then that the last U.S. president that got decent intel or was actually told what was going on in his own government was Roosevelt?
Yeah, I would say that's probably true. But there was probably things the OSS was doing with Allen Dulles again, with Churchill and MI6 and the Special Operations Executive that may not be known to FDR. I think there was machinations going on between Dulles, because he represented the Rockefeller interests, right? And then the Rothschild interests were represented by Churchill. So they're kind of like, we need to set this stage up so that after the war's over, we have the Middle East, right? Churchill called it the soft underbelly. There's really no reason to go for all the sand. It's kind of a big, direction out of our way to go back to Germany. But Churchill sold us all on the soft underbelly, right? And then all those lands became British possessions, Northern Africa, all the way through Cairo and the Palestine, and all the way around, if you want, became British protectorates. All of the oil nations that we know of now, the kingdoms, the Saudi kingdoms, were all British protectorates, if you remember.
Yes.
Because of World War II.
You and I have talked about this on previous shows about BP. British Petroleum. I just want to just quickly here, because I keep hearing OSS and the Dulles brothers, and then there's the other guys, the Hales involved here. I want to take you folks to the full text of the U.S. Constitution here. This is Article 1, Section 9. No title of nobility shall be granted by the United States, and no person holding any office of profit or trust under them shall, without the consent of Congress, accept any present, emolument, office, or title of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. It sounds like that's all these guys did do. It sounds to me like that was their stock in trade. It was to become representatives, kings and princes of the world.
Henry Kissinger, who is probably the dark prince of American history, lived right across from Prince Willem from Holland for many years. He arranged for his wife to come from one of the Argentinian CIA overthrows. You can't believe how close Henry Kissinger courted royalty. The whole Bilderberg with Prince Bernhard, a Nazi spy who then started Bilderberg, was basically a courtly, summoning for all the dark nobility of Europe, that rekindled all those kind of dreams that went away at the end of the Napoleonic Wars. Gave them new life and new power. You saw these princes showing up in their Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and they all seem to have IG Farben shares, after World War II. And of course, they're not going to go after the Nazis at Nuremberg, the Nazi doctors, and they're not going to go after IG Farben because they're all getting a cut. So that Kissinger, especially, because Kissinger was the interpreter for Allen Dulles at the Nuremberg, in Camp King there, which was kind of the reformation of IG Farben from the death camps. All the technology came over. And then the spy school at over Amagaw was again Kissinger. And then when they bring over the number one vendor for the Nazis, which was Klaus Schwab's father, Eugene Schwab, with the flamethrowers, right? they bring Schwab into Harvard, and that's where you get the Club of Rome. That's where you get the World Economic Forum. It started out as the European Economic Forum, but then they got bigger ambitions. So this really affects us all to right now. It's not a dusty history. This is all right now. World Health Assembly today, with the World Health Treaty, Alger Hiss was the first one who said, no, let's not have a one centralized, overreaching group. Let's have a collegial group that helps each other and shares information. I mean, he was the first target that they went after World War II.
So let me give you the Tucker Carlson. No, that's impossible. So you're saying, okay.
I thought you were going to show me your bow tie when you said Tucker Carlson. I thought you were going to do the close-up of the bow tie.
He doesn't do bow ties. He used to back in the day.
He used to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, they're very difficult to keep straight, and only an expert like I am America's bow tie guy.
I said, here's Tucker Carlson imitating Mike Church again.
He did it again.
I can't believe he gets away with this.
And he got away, and he got the girl and the millions of dollars. I got nothing. No, folks, I got a great girl. I got the greatest girl in the world. I call her my best girl, the number one girl in the world. I'm completely and totally with the best girl in the world that there is.
And she's talented. She's beautiful and she's talented.
That's right. She's a radio show producer. She does all sorts of things. I want to go back to something, though, because you just said this, and I want our audience to I want you to zero in on this, okay? Let me go back to New Orleans. Well, first of all, let me gently tell you how to say Michoud. This is Michoud. Now, the French people here won't even, there's no D, it's Michoud.
Michoud.
Okay, so after NASA or after the Apollo program and Skylab, they make the the liquid fuel tank is made here in New Orleans at Michoud. So NASA stays here in an area called New Orleans East. And that is pretty much where Michoud is. It's pretty much a straight shot over what's called Lake Bourne. And then from Lake Bourne right out into the Gulf of Mexico. So, yeah, you could safely launch an ICBM if you were trying to test it from Michoud out towards the Gulf, because it's not far to get to. That's one thing. I didn't know that there was free. I thought that Michoud just came along to do the space shuttle. Didn't know that NASA had a presence here before that. And then you mentioned Lacombe. Okay, well, Lacombe, Louisiana, I'm in Madisonville. Lacombe, let's see, west is that away, east is that away. Lacombe is that away, 20 miles. There is a very small fishing village. It became a very, very small town in Lacombe, still there today. And I often wondered, what in the hell did the federal government need to come in and declare Bayou Signet, which is what it is there, as a NWR, National Wildlife. It's not Bayou Signet. It's Fontainebleau, Bayou Fontainebleau, Blue Fountain. Why did they need to come in and declare our wetland a NWR, National Wildlife Refuge? Now it makes sense to keep everybody out, right? So they could do whatever testing on whatever secret programs. I didn't know they were training American Contras for Cuba in Lacombe.
Yeah. The raid is in the JFK movie. They do a real brief, black and white little cutaway to the Lacombe raid, a night raid by the FBI supposedly. But I mean, Kennedy ordered it. Kennedy got wind of the fact that there was these CIA guys training assassins. It was supposed to be, Operation Mongoose was supposed to be to kill Castro. But in order to develop all these things that Richard Helms and all these dark arts guys, Sidney Gottlieb that were doing, hey, if I develop the poison, it's good for Kennedy. It's good for Castro, right? I mean, I'll just develop it. So it paid for a lot of the dark arts programs that the CIA developed. And Colby kind of talked all about this when he kind of spilled the family jewels in the church hearings. So we know a lot about these assassination programs now. But Lacombe was a regular school for assassins. They were teaching the guy how to fly, shoot, and then make him cry, and then fly home, that kind of thing. Oswald was very much a part of that. David Ferry obviously was out there. Guy Bannister, all these names that we know from the movie were all out there training these people. They were overthrowing. New Orleans was the center of Skorzeny. Had brought over his assassins. Hallmarschak from the Reichsbank had funded it. People talk about the Perm Index, but this was really to launch into the Caribbean, overthrow campaigns. Guatemala was just the first, but there was many later, Iran-Contra. And then also overthrow the South American countries, where you had a lot of ships for bananas and so forth, and coffee and that sort of thing coming and going as a perfect cover to overthrow Argentina, overthrow Pinochet in Chile. And this did happen out of New Orleans. So New Orleans, Higgins boats and all that. New Orleans was the center of all that activity in the 50s and 60s. Dallas doesn't have a port, so it's
no, it doesn't.
Orleans.
So why? Okay, well then answer a question then. Why then does Oliver? First of all, do you think most of Oliver Stone's intel is good? That he makes films about.
I think a lot of it's good. I think Jim Garrison's operation, in general, wasn't very. Didn't get to the juice. If I started the investigation, I'd start in I.B. Hale's office. Why did you give Oswald a job at the, YouTube photo interpretation site? That's my first question. And then and then his wife gets him a job a month before the Texas School Book Depository. Why did you go from getting him photo interpretation in October 12, 62, and then a year later you're getting him a job in Dallas on the Kennedy Parade Group? General Dynamics Security Division, I.B. Hale, planned the route a month before the Kennedy. So they knew that the 130-degree turn there on Elm Street was going to happen. Nightmare on Elm Street was going to happen. That would have been the first place I would have went if I was Jim Garrison, is questioning I.B. Hale. And I'd say, where were your sons? Where was the two sons you've trained as snipers, Robert Allen Hale, who had already murdered John Connolly's daughter in 1959, blew her head off with a shotgun. So I'm going to the people who've already killed people that were in the car or relatives in the car. That's my first stop. Garrison never goes there. Garrison's over here and he's over there and he's chasing all these leads with, Clay Shaw. And Clay Shaw is more of a businessman. He's more of a guy who's running a front company, the Perm Index. And he's down there at the Trade Mart, and he's saying, "Okay, you're bringing in how many bananas and how many machine guns?" He's not.
That's kind of what Stone gives you in JFK about Clay Shaw. That's pretty much the picture you get of Clay Shaw.
But Clay Shaw. I mean, Garrison doesn't go in for the jugular of who killed Kennedy. He's dealing on the outside with these front companies and who moved how many bananas, and that's all well and good for a 3-hour movie. But if you're the Sherlock Holmes, you really want to go and solve the case as quickly as possible, and you want to go to I.B. Hale, and that's the one thing they avoid like the plague. We shot a movie there 3 years ago or 4 years ago now, I think it was, a little documentary, and then Oliver Stone announced he was going to do a remake. And we thought, this is where he's going to bring out how Oswald's a CIA guy. He's going to bring out the McCone memo, how they sent Oswald to shoot down the U-2 so they could get the Perona satellite. And, this is going to be Angleton's, little spy and everything. We think he's going to do it.
This is great.
He didn't do any of it. He didn't even hardly mention it at all that Oswald was CIA at the very end. So very disappointing. Great dramatic actors. You got John Candy and you got Costner and all these great actors. So I can't fault him for his movie making. In the revisit,
because I watched it in the revisit 4 years ago, 5 years ago, one useful thing that I got out of it was the knowledge that, and most markets probably don't know this, is that there is an actual library now that's part of the Library of Congress that has all the known records that have been declassified about the Kennedy assassination that you can go to, and you can go spend all the time you want researching, and there was a guy that did, and he went, and I forget his name, but he sat there and he started going through the records. He's the one that came up with the Roscoe White theory. But I want to go back to something you said. Again, the New Orleans link here, and most conspiracy guys. I'm not saying you're a conspiracy guy because you're a reporter, investigative journalist. Most investigative journalists, conspiracy guys, though, they almost try and deny the Oswald-CIA link. It's like, no, he was a complete and total patsy. This guy was a loser. He flunked his military fitness exam. You know, there was, he trained to be a sniper, but he wasn't a very good one. And so they kicked him out, and that's why he was working at the book depository. Because that's the only gig that he could get. This is kind of the story that you get here. That Oswald, the complete and total loser, and there's no way that he could have done any of this. Well, I seem to be gathering here from Echoes of Laurel Canyon and from you and I talking today that maybe Oswald could have done it, but I don't believe that he did because those bullets came from the ground. Those were fired at ground level. But it seems to me that Oswald's a little bit more dangerous of a guy than we have been led to believe.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, he knew the Hales in high school. He was part of the Civil Air Patrol, which was the guy who, Robert Byrd, who started the Civil Air Patrol, owned the Texas School Book Depository. They were putting people into the book depository as front jobs, for, covert missions that they'd be running overseas. Oswald was in Mexico meeting intelligence people. He had a top secret clearance at Sugi Air Force Base for the U-2. De Mohrenscheld had recruited him when he went to the orphanage there I can't remember what the little island is across the Mississippi from New Orleans. But de Mohrenscheld had known him for a long time, and they were cultivating his Russian language speaking abilities from a childhood. The future Secretary of the Navy, Fred Korth, did the divorce for Marguerite Oswald. So they're all, he's the same guy who was in with the TFX fighter, and, they're all in with this F-111 fighter. So, I mean, there is a tight group, and, breaking Oswald away from that group just doesn't make any sense. He's a key wheel, informationally, to say, oh, now I'm not saying he did it. I am saying, though, he was in that crew.
He was in the orbit.
He was in the orbit. Like if they went to Mexico to shoot watermelons from a tower into these Cadillacs that had convertible Cadillacs, he probably was in the crew with Robert Allen Hale and team, and he thought, hey, I'm a part of the team. Now, maybe he thought he was a part of a counterintelligence investigation to catch the bad guys, right? And then he finds out, wait a minute, I'm not here to catch the bad guys as an FBI informant. I'm getting blamed for all this. I think that's what happened. He didn't pass the paraffin test and so forth, but he did buy the rifle, with the picture. That would be some bona fides if you were trying to get yourself into an assassination group. Right? If you were trying to talk yourself, hey guys, I can be just like you. I'm a good shooter. You would have a picture like that, saying, hey, I bought the rifle. I'm in it with you guys. You would pass out the canary yellow folders for Fair Play for Cuba Committee in front of the trademark to kind of sell yourself as a pro-Cuba guy. And then you would set up this pro-Cuba entrapment operation to catch the communists. That's exactly what I.B. Hale did with General Dynamics. He was very close friends with doing off-book surveillance for J. Edgar Hoover. He was an ex-FBI agent, gone to the CIA. They were developing the Atlas rocket. General Atomics becomes the people who win all the chips from the Cold War for developing the Atlas rocket and the ICBMs, I.B. Hale. So they have a lot to gain if Kennedy dies. They keep the TFX fighter, the F-111 in Fort Worth. I.B. Hale is a beneficiary there. Plus, they get the ICBMs. Plus, Bell Helicopter and Ruth Payne, who also was there in Fort Worth with Bell Helicopter, they get Vietnam, 20 years of Bell Helicopters in Vietnam. So and all of these things were in question up until the day Kennedy is shot. And then as soon as Eisenhower gets on the plane, not Eisenhower, Johnson gets on
Johnson.
Yeah, to take the oath, it all changes. The F-111 gets reinstated. The Bell helicopters gets reinstated. We're back into drafting guys for Vietnam, the whole thing. And so that's why the JFK assassination, I think, is really pivotal to American history.
Well, I think the JFK assassination is pivotal to American history because it's the moment when the CIA went, and I'll bleep my microphone, we just don't give a flying anymore. we don't care if you know about it. What are you going to do about it? We run this shit around here now. So what are you going to do about it, right? And I think this is the moment when they reached it's not the Overton, the event horizon. This is the event horizon where they went, we don't even have to pretend anymore. We can pretty much do whatever we want. Now, there's something that you keep mentioning here, and I have to bring this up because I want to bring this into the modern. Why does this matter to modern church doctrine American listeners or viewers? He said General Dynamics 60 times. General Dynamics is still one of the largest defense contractors on the face of the earth. It still has an ironclad grip on the military-industrial complex and the contracts that are awarded. If you look up the big companies that when Mitch McConnell goes and boasts and brags that, well, actually, we're not doing it. This money's not going to Ukraine. It's going to 38 states and manufacturers in 38 states. Yeah, 38 states were the manufacturers, and there's probably 36 of them at General Dynamic processing facilities of some. General Dynamics is huge. Huge.
Yeah, they make all the nuclear subs, and of course they did all the Apollo. But then they sold off the aviation division to Lockheed, and that became the F-35 fighter that's made right now. And the same factory that I.B. Hale worked at for the F-111 is now an F-35 factory in Fort Worth.
Look at the confluence. They sold it to Lockheed. Lockheed Martin. Martin was Martin Marietta. They did the space shuttle. All of these guys, all of these criminals have been on this ring since the Second World War. It seems to me like the Second World War was what the event that they needed to set all this off.
Yeah, and really, the Peenemünde, V1, V2 rocket, Wernher von Braun and the whole crew, you look at the stuff that was on the board, the drawing board for the Nazis, they basically just went, just did a little erase and got rid of the Nazi eagle and just went and just made it an American eagle. I mean, that's all he did.
Hey, it's not a Nazi eagle. It's a good eagle. It's an American eagle. Yay!
I mean, that's really literally. I mean, you look at the TFX project, the F-111 with the swept wings. They have the aardvark. That was a Nazi, changing the wing geometry in flight. A lot of the radar, ground tracking radar, all these things were Luftwaffe in innovations, and they wanted to commercialize it. And this group it was mainly the investors in Texas, the oil investors. Connolly was an oil. Sid Richardson was his guy, and then so was Johnson. Connolly was Johnson's campaign manager. The Dallas Petroleum Club, the whole Murchison and all those guys. They said, hey, we're not just oil anymore. We're going to do defense. And this is why the I.B. Hale, who had a background in oil, but also had this, knowledge of the CIA and their ambitions in aviation, could go into that Dallas Petroleum Club, and say, hey, guys, let's go over here and get into uranium. Let's go over here and get into ICBMs and missiles. Let's go over and get in aviation. We got all the plans. Fort Bliss had all the German aviation guys. We got them in Huntsville. We got them at all the, these, prison camps in the South. Let's capitalize on it. And that's really the I.B. Hale guy. Really is that guy. And like you say, the rest is history. These companies didn't go away. They're still very much an everyday part of our defense industries.
I want to go to Echoes of Laurel Canyon Part 5, and I want to show you guys the cover or the what Part 5 looks like on the Substack here. So I'll share my screen. Echoes of Laurel Canyon, Part 5. Marilyn Monroe made billions for others with drones, warplanes, and missiles. So Marilyn Monroe is not just a pinup girl anymore, apparently. She is the girl that brought home and helped make the bacon, too. Who knew that she was so accomplished in so many different things, George?
She was the first drone girl and the first drone company, Radio Plane. And she was picked out by one Ronald Reagan at Laurel Canyon, Motion Picture Unit 1, when they wanted to go get Rosie the Riveter types. And Ronald Reagan is who discovered her when he was a captain or a major over at Laurel Canyon Air Force Base. So there's so much history that runs through this. And then there were other people like George Hodel at CIA after World War II and Bob Mayhew, who was the right-hand man of Howard Hughes, that would get these girls pregnant, and then they would do pregnancy blackmail, saying, hey, she's going to have the baby. You need to pay for the abortion. And they would say, how much is that? A couple of thousand? No, that's a lot. It's 100,000 if you want that. And Marilyn Monroe, there's many of the Black Dahlia murders where George Hodel was doing abortion after abortion after abortion. John Huston was a very big part of it.
Hodel, this is they made a mini-series about this, about Hodel on FX. Chris Pine played the dude who was kind of chasing down, he was an investigative reporter like you, and worked for a little independent newspaper in L.A., and he was trying to find out who killed the Black Dahlia, or what they called the Black Dahlia. And he stumbled upon, they go, why do they keep having these meetings? And they actually showed, in one of these episodes, they showed one of the satanic ritual meetings they had at Hodel's house, which was famous for these things out in Hollywood, in the Hollywood Hills. Before what's the one where Alex Jones went to in the Redwoods? Before that one, they had Hodel's mansion where they went and did it. You're nodding.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think of the one up in North California. All of a sudden, I'm forgetting the name of it. But yeah, Hodel ran the hump. He was a China hand. He ran opium into a place called Wuhan, China. That was where the Chinese nationals were. That's where Chiang Kai-shek was. We were going to fund them, the CIA.
I've heard this name, Wuhan, before.
Yeah. So there's a long history of CIA in Wuhan as a place to fly drugs, and also the chemical and biological weapons of the old Japanese army were given to Chiang Kai-shek, and some of them, and some were not. But there was a big argument there between General MacArthur and Bill Donovan about how much to actually give them. But that's the whole background of Hodel, right? Opening the Red Cross and the foreign lobbies and embassies and consulates in Wuhan after World War II. But then he kind of comes back and plays the aviation game, and they're trying to get stuff from Howard Hughes.
Bohemian Grove,
right?
Bohemian Grove.
So when they're going after Howard Hughes, they're using this Black Dahlia, this beautiful girl, this Elizabeth Short, who he falls in love with. He's in a pharmacy and sees her working in a pharmacy in Long Beach. She's up at Missile and Space Defense, which becomes all of a sudden, it's not Lompoc, but I'm trying to remember the Vandenberg Air Force Base. So she's up there in Santa Barbara. They're using her in all these different, places where Nazi, scientists are. And then Hodel is performing these abortions every time somebody famous gets pregnant. Orson Welles is one of the people that may have gotten Elizabeth Short pregnant. But John Huston, the one who did the first movie with Marilyn Monroe and the last movie, Misfits, I think was the last one, Blackboard Jungle was the first one. He is also in the same house that you just talked about in the West Hollywood Hills. I've done shows from there. And they're doing all kinds of compromise operations. And they compromise the heads of studios. So this isn't one of those deals where they have no power. These guys have everybody by the short hairs, literally, with the compromise operations that they're running. And I tell that part of the story too. The Hodel period and the Bob Mayhew is his kind of running mate. is at the 40s and early 50s for compromise operations. But the fighter, they almost kill Howard Hughes twice because they don't want Howard Hughes to inherit all the aviation secrets of the Luftwaffe. Bob Mayhew doesn't. He was a Nazi, supposedly Nazi spy in World War II. They want to take all that aviation and they want to crash all of Hughes's planes. And the plane he crashes in the Beverly Hills airport, that you see this in the movie Aviator with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Right.
What the competitor was I.B. Hale's TFX, F-111 fighter. So they've tried to take out Hughes a couple of times, kill him, in order to feather their beds for this new aviation world, if you will, and also the space race as well. Rocketdyne and a lot of Howard Hughes gets into a lot of satellite companies still to this day.
He's still in. Hughes is still a satellite company.
El Segundo right now is one of the biggest Navy bases for creating spy satellites and so forth. We just did a charrette down there. So this is still very much a part of our world right now.
So I guess then you can kind of summarize a bit from what we've learned thus far, that these guys saw a glimpse of the future and thought that, hey, this being in the sky business is going to be huge. As Trump would say, it's going to be huge. You're going to want to, it's going to be beautiful. It's going to make American skies great again. You're going to want to have a part of this, and you don't want to have to work very hard for it, and you want to kind of be guaranteed that your slice of the pie is going to be there. So you launch all these operations here, primarily for the purpose. This is government business. This is industrial. This is Keynesianism basically on steroids, right? This is government seeding the clouds without telling the public, but picking and choosing the winners. But it seems to me that it starts to kind of spiral out a little bit out of control when the greed element enters in, and they go like, wait a minute, that guy we can do it just as good as he can. We can just kill that guy. You kill that guy and get rid of that dude, then we're the next better up. He's the one that's got all the smarts, the patents, the knowledge, the scientists, and all that. We can do that. We have all that too. We just got to get rid of him. So this was basically a scheme where men were conspiring to pick winners and losers, not primarily based on merit, but primarily based on who could run the dirtiest game in town, it seems to me.
Yeah, that's the Howard Hughes story.
Wow.
They rode the back of the tiger all through the World War II and all through aviation leading up to World War II. And then especially as a contractor, and then they turned their back on him. They attacked the Spruce Goose, and of course I don't think it was a great idea, but but certainly his other planes were innovative planes that they then sabotaged and crashed. So and they tried to make him very afraid of a venereal disease.
And then the CIA makes a movie about him, an ABC movie of the week with Tommy Lee Jones in the 1970s, where he's shown as this wacko, reclusive lunatic, right? Is this
that
part of
starts happening after somebody tries to kill you 5 or 6 times? You start thinking people are trying to kill you.
Now we know why. Did you see that movie with Tommy Lee Jones?
Yeah, and Leonardo DiCaprio did a version as well, and I think Tommy Lee Jones did a great job. And I think DiCaprio might have gone a little bit overboard. The part they always leave out is the CIA. Well, the part they always leave out is
that's intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. They want to write it. They never say George DiCaprio gave half of Hollywood LSD when CIA was seeding LSD in L.A. They leave George DiCaprio out of it. They just focus on Leonardo. But Leonardo is a great guy to watch.
DiCaprio is Leonardo's father.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he was the big.
Yeah, LSD, big time. And they were putting in Timothy Leary, and they wanted to seed the clouds, like you said, seed all of the elites that's the whole music scene, right? The countercultural scene, seed everything with LSD so that we can say this this isn't really where you want to go, middle America. These are all hippies. They're all drug addled. Your daughter's going to get raped. They're going to kill your, little children. They're going to kill families, helter skelter. And it was basically a way of giving the anti-war movement, discrediting the anti-war movement with drugs. It's basically what Curtis LeMay, especially, who's a part of this story as well, Dr. Strangelove, that guy, he's a part of this story as well. And this gets into the murder where Curtis LeMay is working directly with the guy, Reeve Whitson, who is investigating the Sharon Tate murder. She's from a Stars and Stripes pinup girl. So this thing goes straight through Sharon Tate, straight through the Helter Skelter and the Mansons, etc.
Why take out Sharon Tate? What did Sharon Tate ever do to anyone other than get knocked up by the lunatic who probably was a foreign agent, Roman Polanski?
I don't think she was supposed to be there that night. And I think Paul Tate, her dad, was in intelligence, and they were going to run a drug seeding operation, LSD and meth. Wojtek Frykowski was the meth dealer. Hinman had been killed earlier. He was the meth dealer. Polanski was a foreign operative from Poland, so he was doing the LSD and filming two men raping his wife while his wife was under LSD. This was a dark operation, right? When you do that with your wife. But I think Frykowski was supposed to kill. Sebring was pushing the drugs. I think they were supposed to just shut this operation down and say it was helter skelter and blame hippies. But unfortunately, Sharon Tate was there. And that, that's how it all went wrong. I don't think she was supposed to be there that night.
So that's, I'd never heard any of this, but let's look at something that you just said. And I'm skimming through the fifth episode of the Laurel Canyon, the Echoes of Laurel Canyon here. And George already told us about Ronald Reagan spotting Marilyn Monroe. But let's go back to something that you just said about the drug culture. So when we think, and this is done so seamlessly in almost all films going forward. You can even go to a comedy featuring Rodney Dangerfield that is back to school, and you even have some remnants of this when Sam Kinison explodes at Rodney Dangerfield with his, with that famous rant was, is he right? What? I don't know. Is he right? I wish I could say that he was right, but I was there with guns and ammo. We're going up against Charlie. Well, I mean, like you, we're back here partying, putting headbands on, listening to your Beatles records, doing your goddamn Beatles albums. This is a carryover from the CIA operation to completely discredit the very well-intentioned and probably historically correct protest against the Vietnam. No, scratch that. Take two. The entirely correct protest against the unjust war that was America's involvement, United States involvement in the Vietnam War. Now, they tried to do this to me and you. You and I have suffered this in our just brief affiliation here. Tried to do it to us during the Corona hoax, during the Corona doom. They tried to suppress us again. And during the pixie dust, the mandatory pixie dust injections at every stage. These people are crazy. They're a threat. My colleague, Mike Parrott, played a 3.5-minute long montage here of very famous, well-placed people. He played it this morning to start the Parrot Talk show. 3.5 minutes long of very well-placed, famous people saying that the people who were not vaccinated are a threat to humanity or a threat to democracy here. This is, the whole time you and I are talking and others are talking, these are talking points. These are repetitive, well-scripted, focus group tested talking points. But this isn't the first time they did it. So Echoes of Laurel Canyon, you're telling me that they started this in the 1950s, and this is, it's the same songbook. It's just new people, just different songs.
Yeah, I think mass formation psychosis really probably started with Hitler. And how do you take a very small group of Rockefeller representatives, basically? How do you get take over a whole country? How do you get a whole country to be crazy about military domination and annexation of all Europe? And how do you do that? So that was really where they kind of cut their teeth. And then those psychologists kind of came in to the American psychology movement. The PhD was invented in Europe for psychology first as a German innovation, then brought to America. And I think you're right. I think these mass formation psychoses, you only need to have a couple of people. You only need to have one social media film of a person being beaten on a bus for not wearing a mask. Then everybody then getting on a bus probably has a mask. You only have to have one really, 35, 40 million view film. Same thing with the airport. Somebody getting hogtied and led away because they didn't wear a mask in the airport. That's a chilling
stuff.
That's a chilling story for everybody else who wants to travel. If you don't have to worry about a job, then you can be brave, right? But most people, have some, Achilles heel that says, "Ooh, I'm not going to be that guy." And we had those people that were dragged out of parks. Remember when the people weren't wearing their mask with their kids and they got dragged out of parks? Then all of a sudden people didn't go to the parks anymore. I mean, it worked for the most part. As long as we could go to the big box stores and stand 6 feet away from each other, then it was okay to go to Walmart and Home Depot. Remember, we got trained on that.
Talk about a mass psychosis event, though. They've recently admitted now, yeah, we made it up. So what? What are you going to do about it? There was never any science behind the 6 foot distancing rule. Not a shred. They just went, "What's a good number?" They picked an even number, right? 6.
Well, and there's a good reason going all the way back to the American Revolution, where they wouldn't let more than 3 colonists meet together in a table because they thought, congregating is going to be war planning. And 6 feet distancing, you're not talking, you're not meeting with anybody 6 feet. You can't whisper anymore. And really the 6 foot distancing probably has more to do with whispering than anything. And no science, like you say. So, but it is a lockdown, Operation Lockstep, 2011, Rockefeller think tank, and it happened. All those conspiracy theorists that said this will happen someday.
I'm reading from your report, Marilyn Monroe's father, Charles Stanley Gifford. There's a woman who is trying to assist in taking Donald Trump down. Her real name is Stephanie Gregory Clifford. Any relation?
I don't think so. I think that's Stormy Daniels.
Yes.
I think, Stormy Daniels is sort of the modern Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe, her last weekend where she was raped by Sam Giancana and Frank Sinatra and all the mafioso, Johnny Roselli and everything, that's the week that she was, her last week where she was just kind of out on her mind, just wasn't there. Not far from where Trump met Stormy Daniels at the Lake Tahoe Country Club there. So, yeah, these mob connections and so forth, it kind of like they replayed the same compromise operations. And who knew something that they ran in 2006, they'd come back and try to rerun it in 2024, 18 years later, but they did. And, if that one didn't work, they're going to do another one until one of them I think they're finishing up closing statements.
Right. They're doing it right now. And they're actually introduced. I refuse to call her by her adult film star name. She is Stephanie Gregory Clifford is her name. They want you to repeat that name so that you get the negative connotation. Don't tell me that that's not an op either. That's a complete and total op. But now you had the DA, man, it's fired off, and you had the district attorney in New York going along with this. This is an obvious Central Intelligence Agency or some central agency job that's being run. They're picking this judge. This judge gets 3 Trump perps in the same year. Mershaw gets 3 in the same year. You know, I keep wondering, George, and I know you got to get to another interview, so I'll give you a little time to go freshen up. I keep wondering, and every time I interview you, I go like, dude, we have to do this more often because there's so much left on the table.
Yeah.
I keep wondering, though, really, what is your, now this is not, I'm not talking to George Webb, investigative journalist now. I'm talking to George Webb, American, concerned American citizen. This camel's back. Look, the internet has been a bitch for some people. The stuff that we are able to glean today is impossible, nearly impossible, a mere 30 years ago. Can't do it. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but you're going to have to rely mostly on personal intelligence, if you will, relational intelligence, what they call human resources, or there's a term for it. How long before that camel's back? There's enough people out here now. By my count, there's over 50 million people that are going like, dude, if you try and pull that crap that you pulled in 2020 again, you're going to find out whether or not there's radical nutcase white nationalists that are ready to actually perform a rebellion or whatever it is they call it. I don't use the name because I don't want YouTube to censor the video. So on the anniversary of the Epiphany, when people were taking selfies, they don't want another one of those. How strong is this American people's camel's back?
You know, I think they took out a lot of alternatives in the last one. I think that was deliberate. The Great Reset took out a lot of small and independent businesses, alternatives to Amazon and Home Depot and Target and the big box stores. I think it was deliberate so that your ability to do economic boycotts really have been reduced quite a bit. But there is kind of like a big movement for people to be self-sufficient. Gold as an alternative currency. You know, there are active programs, you know, that people are pursuing, and more power to them. You know, I think it's going to be lights out on the internet. I mean, the internet kill switch. I don't think Elon Musk is throwing up another 30 satellites or 50 satellites every 2 weeks because they just want to see if internet from space works. I think it's an alternative so that they can cut the internet. I don't think you have to cut electricity even to just disperse the whole response. You know, you think about how difficult this would be if we couldn't just talk like this and we would just be sitting at home by ourselves. I mean, that pretty much neutralizes us. So I don't think you have to cut electricity.
Well, let me ask you then. Whose side is Musk on then? Because he is. Look, I have a Starlink. It works. I'm in my place, my Walsingham West place in the country, in the middle of nowhere. I got pretty good broadband upstream, and I broadcast entire radio and video shows from there. So it works. So now I don't know that he gets any of this done without some government subsidy and assistance. So is he? Are you saying that he's working with the enemy here with the bad guys?
I don't know, because technology isn't of itself bad or good, right? But he certainly is DARPA funded, and he certainly has a huge subsidy for lithium for his batteries. There's no question about that. I just went through that on the mountain over here with, you know, moving a lot of lithium for a little bit of battery. But yeah, you know, you can turn off a all electrical vehicle very easily. You go outside your 15-minute zone, you can turn it off pretty quick. You could do an excise tax pretty quick. So, you know, I think, but there's not enough resources to put everybody on EVs. There's just not even close. So I think they're not going to do that. But this is an eternal question. How do you resist nonviolently? You know, and then there are other people that say, well, forget that option. I'm going right to the Second Amendment option. You know, so I'm still saying First Amendment is the way to go. but there is certainly going to be some resistance. If this H5N1, here's the World Health Organization meeting, the Assembly's meeting today. What did we have? We had a case of H5N1 in Michigan.
This is the bird flu.
Yeah, you knew it was going to cross from chickens to swine, and then it was going to cross over to beef, meaning we had to have substitute protein for all meat.
So,
right?
But they told us this in the movie with Gwyneth Paltrow. They told us all this. Yeah, this is the plot. They told us all this.
We've been warned.
Absolutely, we were warned.
And if you have an artificial protein, then you can have a little artificial supplement in there too. Soma, for a Brave New World, and they're the government and they're here to help.
Your next series, we must talk about this next time when we have more time. And we're not finished with Laurel Canyon either, but a very intriguing 90 minutes here. Flynn, uranium, and me. Now, is that you or is that me? Who's the me?
That's me, and it's tracking this 20,000 missiles. It goes back to 8 years ago when I'm in Piketon, Ohio, interviewing these people that are dying from plutonium poisoning, because the Russians didn't make very good missiles when they were in a hurry. They had a lot of plutonium fouling. And then these trainloads and truckloads that are coming in are supposed to be full of uranium. There's no uranium here. Where did it go? 20,000 Russian missiles are supposed to be dismantled and end up in Piketon, Ohio, and they don't get there. Well, it turns out John Podesta has a company called ARMZ, and he's stockpiling it in Ukraine. They're selling it to Pakistan and South Korea, and they're selling it to South Africa, and they're selling it to Israel, and they're selling it to Iran and Syria and Libya. And it turns out Mike Flynn is involved in selling to 6 Sunni nations 30 to 40 nuclear reactors in 2013 to 2015. Nobody knows about this deal. It's called the Middle East Marshall Plan. And it's why Mike Flynn and I are going at each other right now. I'm not really going at Mike Flynn, but I'm saying, why didn't you tell Trump that you were doing this deal? Why did you hide it from him? And this is how he keeps Trump Russia alive. He starts texting the Russian ambassador as Trump's about ready to go to the White House. And so he gets surveillance on everybody on Team Trump, right? And then he starts, as soon as Trump does the oath of office, he texts a guy who sold him the uranium from before, and he just keeps this Trump Russia thing going. Why would you do that unless you're trying to get surveillance on the president? And so Flynn is seen as a hero figure. He's got a movie, he's got a bus, he's got the ad wrap on the bus, he's got a new song, he's got a 35-city campaign tour, he's got all these things going on, and it's timed at the same exact time as Trump, taking out Trump. He did it. Campaign, big ad buy, he did it, is the hashtag. Huge, but only Super Bowl gets this kind of ad buy. And then Flynn's being pushed forward at the same time. Flynn's from the intelligence community, not from the business community.
Now, wait a minute. Time out quickly. So you have been predicting, all right, let's close with this. This guy right here, George Webb, investigative journalist, has been predicting that Trump will not be the nominee, that it will be General Michael Flynn. And you even said, I read it, I read your blog. When it comes out, I read it. You even said you heard it here first. So you're giving me the story of how Flynn's going to do it, why he's going to do it?
Yeah, and he's following orders. I mean, he doesn't really, I don't think, want to be president. But they don't want Trump. They do not want Trump, and they will replace him with someone who is palatable to the right, and that's Flynn right now. I mean, Mike Pence? No, I don't think so. DeSantis? No, I don't think so. Can't really trust him or whatever. The deep state really can't trust him. They can trust Mike Flynn. Mike Flynn was there for them at every step along the way. So, and Stanley McChrystal and David Petraeus, those 3 guys, Flynn Intel Group, they can trust those guys. And I'm not saying that Trump couldn't run from jail or being convicted. I'm not saying he couldn't do that. I'm just saying he's going to be convicted this week. He's going to be convicted. And it's not fair. It's of course it's not fair, but it's going to happen.
Well, and I would say that the greatest indicator and the greatest little piece of evidence that we have that would make that claim true. Now, we probably will find out tomorrow, and you'll hear it right here on the Crusade Radio Network and on the Mike Church Show, because we'll go live. The biggest telltale sign that I literally spit liquid out of my mouth when I saw it today, and they held this, these bastards. They held this because they knew it was coming. The Biden regime came out today and said that Lord Biden will address the nation after the verdict is read. I'm going like, holy.
Yeah.
What the hell just happened here? You're going to go on international television as regime leaders, President of the United States, after a civil battle in a court, after a court convicts a guy with basically amounts to a misdemeanor, turned him into a felony? Oh, no. They know. That verdict is already written.
And that's when I said the fix is in last week. And everybody said, oh, you're a hater or whatever. And I'm like, no, fix is in. And now this week, everybody sees the cameras and sees the sharks, and, De Niro's there today and everything. Everybody says, wait, maybe the fix is in. So, and I think the fix really started when Flynn did the bingity bing 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 with the Russian ambassador 8 years ago, because that's throwing a porcupine. That's really taking the profits and operation from the Obama administration. They kept all the $45 billion, by the way. Trump didn't get any of that. And then taking the porcupine of doing that deal with the Russian uranium and then throwing it into the Trump administration. Trump had nothing to do with that deal. That was done in 2015, but Flynn brought it forward and threw it in the Trump's lap. So that's really why they're getting rid of Trump. Not because hush money or whatever. It's not even illegal to pay hush money in New York. So that's not the reason. It's because the deep state does not like Trump. He's not dependable, and they don't want him in there.
So this is being recorded on the 28th of May, 2024. Let the record show, in case there's a mushroom cloud near where I live or where he lives. Let the record show. I'm going to upload this to a bunch of different servers so we have a historical record of it. But let the record show that literally today, and I think you share my show, although you probably believe more than I did. I didn't want to believe. George, I said we're going to close it. You got 3 minutes to get to your next interview. In what I've learned about the Kennedy assassination, I say it was all over then. The United States ceased to exist as our foreparents wanted it to, as they might have dreamed. There was some residual goodwill that's still there. But these people have just taken all that and they have just ruined it for their own purposes here. And I didn't want to believe. You don't want to believe that your government, supposedly the greatest one in the history of Earth, is capable of this. I don't want to believe that Joseph Robinette Biden and his handlers, because it's not him, are capable of what they're about to do in Manhattan. I don't want to believe it. As a matter of fact, until they actually do it, I'm going to say that they're not going to do it because they don't think they can get away with it. But apparently now it looks like that's what they have teed up. And that, for someone like me, I live, sleep, eat, and breathe this, and it's difficult to shock me. I don't want to believe that. Now, I don't think that this ever lands Trump in jail for a nanosecond. Because there's an appeal that's going to go on, and ultimately, if it winds up at the SCOTUS, then they're going to act immediately, and they're not going to send it back down to the lower court and fix it. They're just going to go like, we're vacating the verdict here. So this, to me, would be a delay, not a takeout.
I agree with that 100%, but I do think they want Trump with the bracelets, that picture, and they want Trump in that orange suit, and even if he's only for an hour, but they want Trump in the orange man in the orange suit. They want that so bad. They're going to have it. He'll be released 6 seconds after they get those two pictures. But remember Cap Weinberger with the thing after Iran-Contra, and everybody said Cap Weinberger did Iran-Contra. They didn't say George Bush did it because Cap Weinberger had the bracelets. And it's going to be the same thing with Trump with the orange suit.
Well, all right. We're going to have to leave it there. George, thank you very much for your time. Now, don't close your StreamYard until it tells you the video is done uploading.
Okay.
Okay.
I won't. I won't.
And let's pick this up. All right, sooner rather
Let's do it again. Yeah.
than
I want to come to New Orleans and really do this upright. Yeah.
we should do it. Okay, I'm going to wrap up here and thank George for being with us. Folks, this has been another episode here at the Church Doctrine. For our previous episodes, you can find them at crusadechannel.com, part of the Crusade Radio Network and the Mike Church Show. Look for me on YouTube. I am at Crusade Radio Network. Look for him. He is George Webb. You can find him on Substack, though. He's his place, georgewebb.substack.com. For all of us here on the Crusade Radio Network, for our producer, Justin Redmond, executive producer, Maggie O'Connell, there, I gave her a shout out for you, George. This is Mike Church saying so long. Thank you. God bless you. And as always, may Mary keep you.